Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply, and this video is to bring you a closer look at the Bomber LB4310C-454-601. This is a Bomber spring hinge, is what it is. The LB stands for lube bearing. It is a friction-reduced type of bearing construction, and that washer that's in there is the telltale sign of it being an LB hinge. The 4310 tells us the series in terms of the location of and pattern, the size, location of the screw holes, the treatment to the corner of the hinge. The C means that it's contract grade. This is 134 thousandths thick. It's 454. That means that it's 4.5 inches tall and it's 4-inch wide. So be mindful that this hinge is not 4.5. It's a 4.5 by 4, and the height is the first dimension, is the point of that. Now 601, that means a couple of things. It means it's made of steel, and that it is in a bright black japanned finish. And this is a spring hinge. Okay. There are images down below that will show you the stamping that are on the leaves. A lot of people look at that stamp and say, that's the part number I need. Well, it's not. It's more of just a listing number that's tied back to the fire rating. I'm trying to get the camera to focus on that. Anyway, the images down below will allow you to see that. There is extended information down below. The LB series spring hinges from Bomber there are several and many patterns of all of this material. Several different sizes, locations of screw holes, thicknesses of leaf, the treatment to the outside corner of the hinge, the fact that the hinges aren't always equal in size, the sizes, and the finishes. Any of these will be available really in any of the finishes that you need, and Bomber's quite good at producing a hinge finish that they don't necessarily list. If you want antique nickel, like a 620, well, it'd be a 647 finish, I believe. Now I'm second guessing that. Anyway, whatever the BHMA number is for antique nickel, I know it's 620 if it was a brass-based material, but I forget the steel base. 646 is satin nickel. Anyway, they'll entertain that. They'll make that for you, with a lead time, naturally. Extended information down below goes over some things, and let's go over it now. This is a full mortise hinge. You can see from the swag on the hinge leaves there that when they're brought parallel, they're meant to be mortised flush to the door and frame to achieve that margin between the door and frame. This is contract grade, meaning it's not residential, meaning the leaf thickness is 0.134 thick. This is UL rated for fire rated doors and is grade 1, meaning that it has been tested to meet or exceed 1 million cycles. Self-lubricating bearings, which will prove very maintenance-free for a very long time. Easily adjustable spring tension. We'll talk about that more in a moment. This has an ANSI templated screw hole pattern, which means the location of these holes, this semi-circle or half-moon pattern, is different than other patterns. This is what we would call the ANSI, the American National Standards Institute, when they got together decades ago and said, what's the standard? This is the standard. It's called the ANSI standard, where these locations are. The pivot point with this hinge will align with leaf thicknesses that are also contract grade, meaning you can mix and match this with another 4.5 by 4, provided that the leaf thickness is going to be within 1% of what this leaf thickness is, basically. So meaning you can't use a residential hinge that would be about 97 thousandths thick with this. They all have to be contract grade. Square corner, 8 holes. Speaking of those holes, screws will be included in a complementary finish, both wood and machine screws. 8 holes per hinge. There is a list of a couple of items that will be included. You're going to get a tension rod with every order, and you'll get at least one tension rod with every order, and you'll get 1 tension pin with every hinge. There are links down below should you need to buy additional tension rods or tension pins. We're going to get to that very, very soon. Finally, next, there's a link to a document called Template down below that will allow you to review all of the dimensional properties of this hinge so that you can review that and know up front if this is going to match your existing preparation if you're replacing a hinge. And if it's a new installation, it's nice to know that's where the holes are going to be for the hinge. Moving on, there is a link to the installation instructions and a link to the certifications and hinge selection guide. Let's look at that one first. Hinge selection guide. Down in the lower third of that page, you'll see how many hinges they recommend for the size of the door, the weight of the door, I should say, and the size of the hinge. So a 4.5 by 4, a 4.5 by 4, that'll be in the 4.5 by 4.5 category. You would use 2 spring hinges and 1 butt hinge if you were dealing with door weights up to 115 pound. And you can see below that, if you get heavier than that, you'd be at 3 spring hinges. Usually 2 spring hinges are going to do the job flawlessly. A 3070 hollow metal door, wood door, 2 spring hinges. Put 1 in the middle, put 1 in the bottom, put your ball bearing hinge up at the top. And a ball bearing hinge that would be compatible with this would be a Bomber BB 5000-454-601. And that would work splendidly for you. Now, if you've got some wind condition, or you have the need to change the setting of the tension of the spring over time, like the seasons change, air pressure changes, windows open and closed will change over time, you may want more spring hinges so that you've got more ability to more properly control the opening in terms of the closing aspect. Now, I'm not a fan of spring hinges to close the door because they're a spring. Wind the spring up and it just slams shut. Well, to turn the spring tension down so it doesn't slam is a compromise between getting it closed and not having it slam. If it's a fire-rated door, the door has to be 2 things. It has to be self-closing and self-latching, and you have to have both of those components. And if your spring hinges can't get the door closed without slamming, or can't get the door closed at all, then you don't really have a fire-rated door. Interior, condo building, entry of that condo unit, that's 2 spring hinges all the time. But if you're dealing with the front door of a 3-flat in Chicago, you might want all 3 spring hinges, because over time the landlord can tailor the tension on those spring hinges to give you good operation throughout the year, because those wind conditions, the pressure of the air will change as the use of the building changes over, in the winter, all the windows or doors are closed up, it's just going to close. In the summertime, the windows come up, and now all of a sudden a lot of air is rushing through. Maybe you need to back that tension off a little bit. Whatever the case might be, more spring hinges allows you a better control, because I think of it as a tugboat. A tugboat doesn't go very fast, but it can pull a lot of weight. Well, the more spring hinges you have, the more stored energy you have, especially in the latching cycle, the last 10 or 15 degrees of the cycle of the door, to have enough residual torque, so to speak, in the hinge to be able to get it to the latch, overcome the friction of the latch bolt hitting the strike, misalignment, or the door not being square, or actually the door coming up because maybe the door is not, the hinge jamb is actually tipped so that you're actually fighting gravity a little bit. You'll notice changes like that. But in almost all instances, 2 spring hinges is really where you're going to be. If you find that that's insufficient, add a 3rd, but go middle and bottom is where you want, because 70% of the door weight's on that top hinge. A spring hinge is technically not load rated, so you're not going to want to have or ask the spring hinge to carry a lot of weight. One thing to note on here, and I don't see where it says that information, regarding spring tension, how many holes to utilize, which is in the installation instructions. Oh, it is actually. Okay, so with the tension collar pointed up, you'll see that there is a collar here and there's not one here. Install it with this pointed up. When you have this up, hang your door. Insert your tension rod into one of these holes and turn it clockwise. And you're going to reveal new additional holes there that you will insert a tension pin into. Do not exceed 4 holes if you're going to 90-degree opening. Do not exceed 3 holes if you're going well past that, because you might break the spring. Set your tension. Play with the middle and bottom hinge to see what's more effective. You should get more efficiency out of the bottom hinge, closing the door. And then tailor that to suit your needs. Hang on to that tension rod because you'll need it later in time, surely. You know, if you don't have one, it's a piece of tempered steel. I would think a 4-penny nail might work. The diameter of this piece of steel is .090, so keep that in mind. 90 thousandths is what you need to put something in there, should you need to come up with a homemade solution. Homemade solution when it comes to tension pins as well, while it's done, it's not necessarily advisable because you don't want to ever make contact with that tension pin. Not that you would, but imagine a scenario where you took a nail and you cut it with your end cutters and used it as a tension pin. Now you've got a sharp projection coming out. There has been instances where people have harmed themselves. Fitting room doors, a couple of spring hinges on the louvered doors, someone leans up against that and starts to slide down and realizes that they're cutting themselves on that improper hinge pin. Hinge pins from the factory are going to feature a beveled, ground edge so that you don't run the risk of harming yourself at all. There we go. Other than that, this is a regular spring hinge. Finally, there is a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the Bomber products that we sell, but also a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. I'm quite partial to Bomber. It's not only because of my familiarity with them, or decades of distributing for them, the exceptional product line and customer service technical support, but made in the USA. The fact that Bomber's quite proud of, as am I to represent them. If you have any questions on the Bomber, LB4310C-454-601, spring hinge, or any other Bomber product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.